All right. So in Israel, there was recently a terrorist attack, basically, by a group called Hamas. Hamas is a group in Gaza. Gaza is a little section of Palestine that's been, Palestine's it's in Israel, but basically throughout time, the Zionists and the nationalists and the far right people have been basically whittling away the Palestinians' land and taking it over time. And basically, what's left is the West Bank. Um, Basically, what's left is the West Bank, which is this right here. This is the West Bank and Gaza. Gaza's this little strip of land. So back in 1947, they used to all live together. You know what I mean? This was right after World War II, so the British helped settle, helped colonize, helped settle the Jews that were prosecuted in World War II in Palestine. But throughout time, as you can see right here, 1947, the partition plan was this. They were going to divide it up, right? They were gonna say this is for Jews, this is for Palestinians, blah blah blah. You guys can live here, have equal land. But as you can see, like obviously the fucking government in Israel is not following those laws or the rules by the UN. So what's left of Gaza is honestly this little bit right here. This is Gaza right now, and this is where Hamas lives, and this is the West Bank, which is currently being occupied. And that is against international law, and it's a really complicated issue. So there's 2 million people in this little bit of land right here. 2 fucking million, and every day they're being fucking bombarded. And then over here in the West Bank, I don't know how many people there are, but like they're clearly their land is just being colonized. Because settlers can literally, Jewish settlers, Zionists, can literally just walk into your house, take your house. If you fight back, they can shoot you. They can shoot you either way, and nothing will ever happen because they're Muslim. So it's like, it's fucking crazy, dude. It's crazy what's going on right now. And these people have been pushed into this little corner right here. And there's a terrorist group that took over in 2006. This terrorist group took over. There were elections. The government there was called Fatah. Uh, Hamas won because Hamas gives social services to people. So they give health care to people. They're like, they protect the people. They're fighting Israel oppression or whatever. You know what I mean? Um, it's Yeah, so they give all the social services, and then Fatah was the government there, but they lost the election because they weren't ready for an election. And Israel and the UN and shit made them have an election at that moment, so their Fatah lost, and Israel won. I mean, not Israel, Hamas won. Um, and that basically made it to where we are now. Fatah, the government, the actual democratic government, lost, and now Hamas is in there, and they're not doing elections anymore. And the last time people voted was 2006, and half of the population is kids. So it's like a really fucked up situation right now, and like Israel is just bombarding the shit out of these people, and it's just like really depressing. Anyways, let's get to the news to see what's going on.
It's about asking the question, why the United States supports Ukraine in fighting what they call occupation, while here they are supporting the occupier who continues to occupy us.
Hello. I do not know how to intro videos that are so depressing, but here we are.
Yeah. I feel
So
the
in this
same way.
video, I'm going to try and break down how this issue of Israel-Palestine is not complicated. It really isn't. I'm going to discuss what's been going on recently. I'm going to show you a surprising video I found surprising from CNN. And there are actually a couple interviews that CNN has been doing that I found surprising in a good way. And I'm also going to at the end just show you what ultimately the goal is, hopefully. I'm not sure if it's realistic, but what the goal should be. So over the weekend, Hamas attacked Palestinian or Israelis, took many hostage. In response to that, the Israeli government bombed civilians in Gaza. Gaza is controlled by the Israeli government. They control what goes in and out. Gaza is essentially an open-air prison of 2 million people. Half of them.
Yeah, exactly. So like Israel literally controls the water, the food, all the trade that goes into Gaza, the electricity. And every once in a while they say they mow the lawn. They mow the lawn, which means they bombard Gaza. And so like they just at this point they're just using Hamas as an excuse to bomb like Gaza. And then when you bomb people, you're radicalizing them. You're making them hate you even more. So like the government of Israel is just breeding terrorism in itself.
Of them are children. The average age is 18 years old because most of them don't live too long. You have dirty water, you have a lack of medicine, a lack of food, and that's controlled by, again, the Israeli apartheid government. Now, you have this is on the 7th, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on Palestinian civilians in Gaza to leave now because the Israeli military is going to turn all Hamas hiding places into rubble, which means we're going to bomb civilians. Now, here's the problem. How do they leave?
Exactly.
They're stuck there.
Israel
controls who leaves, who goes in.
It's so fucked up. It's so disgusting.
How are they going to leave? The reason they're there is because to begin with, it's because they're stuck there. They can't leave. Israel doesn't let them leave. So this Netanyahu here, he knows what he's doing. He's working on the world's ignorance of what Israel is doing. And you're seeing a lot of that ignorance. I'm seeing a lot of it, both on television, online, on social media. Thankfully, there have been some voices breaking through, and I'm going to get to some of that in a bit here. Yanis Varoufakis on Twitter, writing the path to ending the tragic loss of innocent lives, both Palestinian and Israeli, begins with one crucial first step, the end of the Israeli occupation and apartheid. So I should be clear. I don't want to see any civilian, Israeli, Palestinian, I don't want to see any civilian hurt or killed.
No, we need to end this shit.
Most people, I think, I would hope want that.
This is not.
But in terms of who holds the power, what is the root cause of all of this? Who has the actual ability to end the suffering? That is the Israeli government that has all the power, in conjunction with Western powers like the US, Canada, the UK, that help to enable what Israel is doing to Palestinians. They hold the power. They have all the power in the situation. This is, I always think back to, in case you haven't seen, there's this Michael Brooks quote where he discusses how this is not complicated.
It's not a complex issue. That's the big thing. It's super simple. There's one group that has enormous power. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East. It's backed by the United States. It acts on another population of people with total impunity and is never held accountable for anything. So there's no symmetry in the relationship, period. And just as like a thought experiment, IDW people, if we know that if somehow a population of Jewish refugees ended up in West Bank and Gaza, and an Arabic government in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv had an open-air prison in Jewish Gaza, which they bombed with white phosphorus. They killed civilians indiscriminately, and they had no provisions for medicine. They had an embargo that blocked food, that electricity wasn't running, that there was an over 48% unemployment rate. Life expectancy and malnutrition statistics were horrifying. One of the major policymakers in this hypothetical Arabic Palestinian state said, we need to put those Jews on a diet. In the West Bank, there was another Jewish area where there was a little bit more autonomy, but there was regular Arabic settlements where they pulled up the Jewish farmers' foods. They terrorized them with rocks. The security forces broke children's bones, and they couldn't drive on their own roads. We'd all have no problem understanding what that was. So there's nothing complex about it. The second part of your question, it's a pure asymmetry relationship. And the question is rights or not. So that's it. It's not complicated.
You have one group holding all the power. They have the ability to end this. If there were equal rights for Palestinians, if there was a one-state solution, because two-state at this point does not seem plausible. I mean, one state either is also not a simple solution either. But in terms of what the solution is simple. If they were to get to that solution, getting there is a little more complicated because of the power at play here. But the solution is simple. You have here the Israeli government essentially putting their own citizens in danger because they will not allow Palestinians to live free. That is what's going on here. That doesn't absolve Hamas from what they're doing. But when you have people occupied like this for as long as they've been occupied, what do you expect is going to happen?
Yep.
People are going to rise up. There's going to be violence, clearly. And that's what happened. And it's going to continue happening unless Palestinians are able to live free.
Israel's an apartheid state, man.
So I'm going to quote Mehdi Hassan. He also has a clip. Surprisingly, there's been a lot of good. I mean, they've been sporadic. I don't think it's been the 24/7 coverage, but there have been some good pieces on cable news of all places on this. Mehdi Hassan, though, has always been consistent on this. So he writes here, Gaza, in the words of an ex-Israeli intel chief, is an open-air prison, hell on earth, per the UN Secretary General. 2.2 million people, 50% kids, 50% in poverty, 90% without access to clean drinking water. I shared some important background and context on MSNBC. So I'll link to this below because I got a lot more clips to get to. I can't fill this whole video with clips. But this from today.
This fucking asshole.
Israel's defense minister says, quote, I've ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we will act accordingly.
Calling them animals.
Understand, this will have very little impact on
You're dehumanizing
Hamas. Hamas,
animals.
if anyone has power within the Gaza Strip, it's Hamas.
Fucked up.
They probably have food.
Coming from
They probably have water. They're probably good.
Like the Holocaust and shit.
This is going to impact Palestinian civilians.
Oh my God.
And Israel must know this. This is no humane way to act. And I don't even, as terrible and as, fascist oriented the Israeli government is, it's also on their allies. It's also on the US.
America,
it's on Canada. It's on the UK that keep enabling this.
They're supporting it, man.
This is why Israel's is able to keep doing this, is because they have allies around the world that allow them to act this way. Let me first show you this clip. This is Omar Badar on CNN discussing the crisis.
I mean, look, there's all these pronouncements about the need that they're going to do everything they can to avoid civilian casualties. It is really worth emphasizing here that Israel has bombed Gaza many, many times before, and Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and even Israeli human rights organizations like B'Tselem say that this is not at all what Israel's conduct is. There isn't an effort to minimize civilian casualties.
Yeah, they don't
There's
give a
mass
shit about the
indiscriminate bombing
civilians.
of
They're literally
civilian areas.
Gaza
And
to the
frankly,
ground while
we're
there's
watching that
civilians in there.
unfold right
And there's
now as well.
hostages. There's hostages.
The
They're
policy
still
is
bombing the
essentially
shit out of
to
Gaza.
punish the entire Palestinian population, cutting off electricity to all of Gaza, preventing anybody in Gaza from coming in and out. This is an act of collective punishment. And this is exactly the trajectory that we unfortunately are on. I think what we're going to see is much greater death.
Yeah,
that's going to cover the entire Gaza Strip.
Population
and at the end of it,
for the
Palestinians are going to remain a population that is captive and under an illegal siege, as recognized by the UN. And we're only setting ourselves up towards another round of this in the future. What we need right now is the world community to come together and start dealing with this issue seriously, understanding that this policy of giving Israel a carte blanche to behave however it wants towards Palestinians is not a way to actually achieve long-lasting peace. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The one thing that has not been tried so far is allowing Palestinians to be free of Israeli occupation and military dictatorship. And until we start taking Palestinian grievances seriously, until Israel starts seeing Palestinians as equal human beings who are deserving of the same human rights and decency and dignity that Israelis enjoy, I'm afraid we're going to be stuck in this situation for a very, very long time.
And that's the situation that they're in. Until that happens, until Palestinians are able to have the same freedoms as Israelis do, then random acts of violence are going to continue happening. Not because it's okay for them to happen, not because it's excusable, but because that is the result of occupation. When you occupy, what, you expect them people just to sit there happily? Like, anyone supporting occupation, you are in support of violence against Israelis. That's the reality. This is a great interview. Great. So I was surprised by how good this was. This is Fareed Zakaria, who is not always great, but this interview is good. The Palestinian View from the West Bank, my conversation with Palestinian activist and legislator Mustafa Barghouti, who is not connected to Hamas, about the terrorist group's offensive in southern Israel. So I'm going to play a lot of this because it's really good, but in 3 different parts since it's 10 minutes long. But let me get to the first bit here.
But I think this situation that has evolved is a direct result of the continuation of the longest occupation in modern history. Israeli occupation of Palestinian land since 1967. This is 56 years of occupation that has transformed into a system of apartheid, a much worse apartheid than what prevailed in South Africa. Yes, maybe Hamas did not recognize Israel, but the PLO did, and the Palestinian Authority did. What did they get? Nothing. Since 2014, the Israeli governments would not even meet with Palestinians. The question here is not about dehumanizing Palestinians as is happening and calling them terrorists. It's about asking the question, why the United States supports Ukraine in fighting what they call occupation, while here they are supporting the occupier who continues to occupy us.
I think this is a great point. Why is it so clear when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, but not clear here? I mean, it's clear to me, but why isn't there just widespread acceptance of, yeah, clearly Israel is oppressing Palestinians. Clearly that has to end. Why isn't that the main conversation? Why do we have to keep fighting back against the propaganda that is in favor of this far-right-wing Israeli government?
Like, they have a far-right government, so it's even worse. It's like, what?
This issue is incredibly frustrating because it is so clear. Yet so many people are fed propaganda and are very confused at what the reality is. I mean, clearly from what I'm seeing through social media, either people are just bloodthirsty or they simply do not understand that Palestinians are being occupied, that they cannot leave Gaza.
They can't leave.
And that's just Gaza. Forget about,
Israel doesn't let
the other lack of rights that Palestinians have when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the West Bank. I mean, those are other topics we can bring in here. But when it comes to Gaza alone, it's very clear, let alone everything else. Let me get to a little more from this interview.
If that is the analogy you wish to draw, what Hamas is doing is they're targeting Israeli civilians, women, children, grandmothers.
No, they are not.
Is that not a classic terror? Isn't that classic terrorism? They're not fighting the Israeli government. They're fighting ordinary people.
That's one way of putting it, but it's not true. I think Hamas mainly attacked military establishments, military installations. And most of the people they have arrested and taken as war prisoners are military people. I do not accept attacking any civilian. I do not accept that Israelis attack our civilians. But look at what Israeli planes are doing now in Gaza. They are bombarding houses. They're bringing down to earth, and you've shown that on your screen. Whole apartments, whole buildings, high-rise buildings are brought down to the ground, And we already are receiving reports about families who are killed.
Be more precise.
9 people in one family, 10 people in another family, including children. I do not want any civilian to be hurt, neither by Palestinians or by Israelis. But the question is how to end that. Will it end by attacking Gaza Strip another time? Israel has already conducted 5 wars on Gaza. One of them lasted 51 days. They destroyed everything. This did not stop Hamas, did not stop resistance. There is one way to stop any violence, and that is to end the Israeli occupation. And that is for the United States to be fair. They cannot say that Israel has the right to defend itself, but we, the Palestinians, don't have the right to defend ourselves. Let me remind you the case of Shireen Abu Akleh, who was not only Palestinian, but also an American, a very peaceful journalist. She was shot to death by an Israeli sniper. Was anybody indicted? Was anybody taken to court? No. 52 other journalists were also killed. Our first aid providers are shot at. Our doctors are shot at. This should stop. And the only way to stop it is to tell Israel, you have to respect international law, you have to end this illegal occupation, and accept Palestinians as equal human beings.
That's it.
Yeah, for real.
And for us to see nothing come of the fact that the Israeli government, and this is clear to everyone involved, clear to the US, clear to Canada, clear to everybody, that the Israeli government killed an American journalist. They did that randomly. And nothing came from that. That shows you just how blind, how willfully blind Israel's allies are. And how, again, this is not just on Israel. Because if there was some repercussions there, if there was something that came from that, pulling support away from Israel for doing that, clearly doing that, if there was any repercussions at all, then Israel would maybe feel some pressure and not, again, if that sort of pressure on Israel continued from other governments, then at some point they'd be forced to pull back their oppression of Palestinians. But you're not seeing allies put that option to Israel. You're not seeing any allies try and force Israel's hand into, I don't know, recognizing some human rights of Palestinians. So this is going to continue.
Yep.
This is going to continue as long as Israel is supported by its allies in the ongoing apartheid that they are committing. Last thing here, just to make it very clear, Yanis Varoufakis again, who is fantastic generally and fantastic on this as well. Just a great person to look to follow when any major event is going on. Writing here, apartheid must be smashed and the two-state solution is nearly impossible, even if desirable for a number of reasons. The only realistic, civilized solution is for a single secular state for all, with equal civil liberties independently of religion and ethnicity.
There gotta be a democracy, all
That
religions.
I agree, and I think this is clearly how you.
On the 7th of October, those son of bitches Hamas, they went into the fence that is regularly heavily guarded. Usually if there's like a dove that comes close to it, it will be shot. Those people went in and they went for 6 hours before IDF forces was deployed, killing our friends, our families, kidnapping our grandmothers and babies, and went in. I want to ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, after you have fractured the Israeli community and you have fucked our courts, our Supreme Courts,